Wow. I have the utmost pity for all the people who are hanging on throughout season 8. I had given up early into season 7, and I had lost faith early in season 6, and I was deeply worried. Halfway through season 5, I was unsure of where we were going in the season finale of season 4. It has been several years since I trusted this show to deliver something satisfying. There have been satisfying moments intervening since the season finale of season 4, make no mistake. There has been tremendous action, impressive CGI, glorious budgets, great sets, whether they were CGI or practical. There has been so much tremendous, heretofore unsurpassed fucking, just tremendous technical achievements in this show. But all throughout, since they have departed from the source material, the writing has been poor and getting worse and getting worse and getting worse, consistently in a linear downward turn to this, the lowest point in the show. Again, all of you still just in angry shock over episode 3 and have not spared the anger, disappointment, grief, and just baffled, dumbstruck looks for the episodes past it that, again, according to the linear downward spiral, has been greatly surpassed in how much it sucks ass. Every episode since to now, episode 6. What's the one good thing that happened? The one good thing that happened in this episode. Jon does the right thing. For once. Makes a wise decision, at great cost. For once. He takes one look in Daenerys' eyes and realizes that she is batshit insane and that she will kill millions. And he chooses, at risk to himself, at risk to his family, which, let's be clear, he probably would have eventually been killed. His family, at least, would have eventually been killed. Because Daenerys was fucking crazy. Should she have been crazy to start with? No. I don't think she ever should have been mad, but we're just working with what we're working with on this episode. And Jon Snow chooses to kill her. The dragon decides to be present to witness his crime. And two things could have happened. The dragon could have not cared, or the dragon could have bought into the whole theme of the dragons being Daenerys' children and killed Jon Snow. Instead, the dragon burns the Iron Throne in a symbolic act that dragons are neither wise enough, clever enough, symbol-aware enough to have done. It made no sense. It was the writers masturbating their malformed chode penises. It's a great analogy for what the writers' talent level is in this show. Malformed chode penis. And they jerked those off to completion, and their ejaculate was the boiled lava remains of the throne that never mattered. The dragon then leaves. Okay. Before that, Tyrion decides to just own up to his crime of freeing Jaime and digs a nice little clap back to Daenerys and said, well, yeah, I freed my brother and you burned a city, bitch. And she makes her weird fucking Emilia Clarke faces out of... Here, let me do my Emilia Clarke impression. God, her mouth is huge. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm sorry. So that's kind of how we start. This episode is 80 minutes. Again, this episode could have very easily been cut in half to 40. We didn't really even have enough content to justify an entire episode at normal length, where there was a lot of walking and looking around at things and just trying and not really succeeding to exude an air of heaviness. And all I could think was, you are wasting my time. And there has been a lot of that this entire season. Just people walking around, being depressed, awestruck at their environment, wasting my time. There were many conversations that did not to be as long or repetitive as they were, nor as stupid as they were. We'll get to that. And all that happens. Then Jon Snow kills Daenerys after he talks to Tyrion, and the only real good scene in the entire episode was Tyrion explaining to Jon how fucked they were, how fucked he was, and that he doesn't really have any choice but to kill Daenerys. And not only does he not have any other choice, but there is no other morally righteous choice but to kill Daenerys, who never should have needed to be killed except for of the great and high unforgivable crime that is the writing of this show. As everybody's arcs were subverted. Maybe I should take back everything I said about Arya killing the Night King, because her arc was summarily also subverted, as in she never killed Cersei. She never got to come back to her family. We'll get to that. Or kind of, but not really. So, after Jon Snow kills Daenerys, the show is effectively over. Nothing that happens after makes any sense, nor does it actually matter. A council apparently is convened at behest of apparently the only person left who is in charge of King's Landing, Grey Worm, who subsequently makes little to no effort to assert any control over the situation except for to insist that Jon Snow and Tyrion Lannister be killed. But rather than choose to do this himself, since the only person who technically outranks him in the regime that owns the castle, which is a horde of Dothraki and another horde of Unsullied, he chooses not to and instead convenes Sansa, Arya, Davos, Brienne, all of which could possibly be considered conspirators to have killed his queen, and yet he brings them in, along with Sir Brynden, I don't know if it's Brynden the Blackfish. No, that's Edmure Tully. I forget which Tully it is. It's one of the Tullys, who is a bannerman of Sansa, who is presumably a conspirator to kill his queen. Sam, best friend, an ally of the man who killed his queen. And then a couple of lords who had sworn to serve Daenerys independent of the influence of the Starks. He brings out Tyrion Lannister, who is a prisoner sentenced to die by his queen and also by the desire of Grey Worm, who unilaterally chooses to make a convention to elect a king, the future law of the realm. He makes this decision unilaterally as a prisoner sentenced to death by the man who is in control of the capital and in control of the largest standing army by far in the land. All the lords consent to Tyrion's sole selection of who shall be the ruler of the realm. Bran Stark, who apparently had the plan all along to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms, and laughably Another thing, all the lords, except at the end of this war, this long war that was pretty much started by the Starks, technically, agree to elect Brandon the Broken, just because he'll never have kids, I guess. And I guess, whatever, if they want to do something about it, they can just wait, I guess. The Greyjoys are just overruled and I guess have no decision in this. Sansa Stark, the stupidest character in a show that is a circus clown show of stupid characters, and that's saying something since Daenerys and Jon Snow exist in this show of stupid characters, insists to her brother, who has just been named the King of the Seven Kingdoms, that he is now the King of the Six Kingdoms, and that the North will remain free. Everybody accepts this. Nobody else makes a plea to be independent. Not even the Greyjoys, who have fought multiple rebellions in order to try to be independent. They just sit there in sullen, stupid, retard, mongoloid, pond scum, amoebic silence and accept them being shit on because they don't matter. At least not to the writers. Everybody assents to this. They haggle over the fate of Jon Snow. Now, Jon Snow, having killed Daenerys, should be put to death, as well as Tyrion, as well as Sansa, Sam Tully, Davos Seaworth, Gendry, Baratheon, pretty much everybody else who has more or less either betrayed the Queen directly or should be presumed to have been a co-conspirator, even if they were or weren't, doesn't matter. It's just what would have actually made logical sense. A concept that is long abandoned in this show. This is accepted. But Jon, as Arya states, should be the king of the North. Grey Worm says he wants to execute Jon Snow and has the power to just do this, like I just said, but doesn't. So they decide to name Bran the king of the Six Kingdoms. Bran names Tyrion Lannister his hand, effectively, just by saying so, freeing Tyrion from his fate. Grey Worm apparently only protests this most meekly and is ignored. Tyrion negotiates that Jon Snow neither be put to death, nor does Jon Snow be freed to be the king in the suddenly free North. No, Jon Snow is, get this, get this, get this, get fucking this. Sentenced to take the Black. The Wildlings, presumably the enemy that the modern Night's Watch is tasked with defending the kingdom from, have either been integrated into the kingdom or essentially allied with it effectively for years, and are presumably no longer a threat to the North or to the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. The others are dead. The wall has effectively been breached. Not destroyed as I had presumed, but greatly breached by a fucking undead dragon, and is effectively not the barrier it once was. There is no point to the existence of the Night's Watch. None. But the completion of Jon Snow's arc is to arrive back where he started. Sansa, the biggest idiot on the show and the most undeserving Lady of Winterfell possible, is now the Queen in the North. She makes no effort to keep Jon Snow around which is something her petulant, selfish character would have done. Jon Snow does not fight his faith. Grey Worm, dejected at being effectively punked out by the bad writing of the show and literally no one else. He just doesn't make any attempt to get justice or take over the kingdom or exercise the force and control he has. Leaves like a coward with the tail between his legs with the rest of Unsullied back to Essos. The Dothraki have no send-off. The last remaining dragon flies off, never to be seen again, with the corpse of Daenerys. Arya Stark, our last surviving main character, besides Bran, who gets to be Master of Coin. The new High Maester, Grand Maester, whatever the fuck, is now Sam Tully. The two new Kingsguard people that exist are Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne. Okay. Davos Seaworth is now the Master of Sails. Bran is the king. Tyrion is the hand. Some fan service ensues, and Arya, rather than go home with her sister, chooses to, get this, take off and sail west to discover what lies beyond the endless sea that's way off the side of my map. According to a book I've referenced a couple times, Fire and Blood, The History of the Targaryens, Volume 1, there was, in fact, a woman who stole a flagship, a large amount of money, and escaped the king's justice. I forget exactly what she was guilty of. I believe she also stole 3 dragon's eggs that eventually did become the 3 dragons that Daenerys births in the show. She stole those dragon eggs and sold them, for some ships, now that I remember correctly, to somebody in Pentos a couple hundred years ago. Takes those ships and chooses to sail them into the endless sea. They basically get wrecked by sea monsters and gigantic fucking maelstroms and typhoons and shit. And they don't find anything out there. There is something that was apparently, I believe, found by a famed I want to say he was a Valyrian, a former banner house of the Targaryens, a Valyrian or Valyrian. I'm not sure quite how to say the name. Not Valyrian like the sword, but like Valyrian or something, or Varilon. I don't know how to fucking say it, but it starts with a V and it looks like Valyrian, but it isn't. This guy did, in fact, sell to some Western islands and find some really expensive spices and materials, and he brought them back and became basically the wealthiest man and had the wealthiest house in Westeros for a long time because of this. And that's about all that's out there. Now, Arya, whose character nor her arc has anything to do with seafaring or exploring, just chooses to leave. She does not do anything else she could have done. And literally anything else she could have chosen to do would have made more sense than what she did on the show. She could go home, live a simple life, return to the Temple of the Faceless Men, go be a Bravo, go home to Gendry and Storm's End, pretty much anything. Anything at all. She could just disappear without a trace and it would have made more sense. She could have gone out looking for her wolf, who, like Ghost, is still alive, folks. We have forgotten about Nymeria and her great band of marauding wolves. The end. Jon Snow reunites with Tormund Giantsbane and Ghost and rides off north to the wall to do whatever the fuck it is to do, because again, like I said, there's no point to the existence of the Night's Watch. Expectations subverted, I guess. Not in a good way. I cannot yell or cry. I can't even cackle maniacally like I did last time. I am past the point of reacting to this, except for this little eye twitch I have and this little crooked, ugly sneer. What a waste of a show. If I sat here searching for words any longer than I already have, I would be wasting your time. And I hope that you're not any more upset than I am, because I pity the people who remained invested, remained hopeful up to this point. I'm sorry to the fans of the characters of Daenerys, Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister, Jaime Lannister. Sorry to the fans of Ser Jorah Mormont. Sorry to the fans of Grey Worm even. Sorry to everybody. I'm not sure I could have fucked this up worse if I was actively trying to sabotage the show. If I was given a pen and a sheet of paper, or a stack of papers or whatever, or a laptop, whatever you want, and said, you have just watched the season finale of season 6. Write 6 episodes for season 8, the final season, and try to ruin it. Try to make it suck. Try to baffle and shock and enrage the audience. I could not have done a better job than the writers of this show, who were presumably not being paid to sabotage it. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thank God it's over.